Hello, welcome back to the Waffle Press movie Hangouts. We haven't used Google Hangouts in a while. We're going to see how this goes. We're using Google Hangouts because I, your host Diego Crespo, brought on a guest. But first, I'm going to introduce my other co-host, Nick Valero. Hi, Nick.
What up? Hey, how's it going?
Hi. It's going good. Gene's not here. He's working because this doesn't pay us yet. But hopefully, with your help at patreon.com, it could soon. Anyways, the real reason we're here is because that was my attempt at like a cheap plug at the beginning. I'm so sorry, everyone. The real reason we're here is because we're welcoming Andrew Salazar to the show. Hi, Andrew.
Hello, friends. Hello, family.
Hello.
I am here.
Hello. It's so good to hear your voice because we've never met in person. Gene met you in person though, and we talked about bringing you on the show, and we were like, "That's a great idea." And then Gene got held up with work, and that's understandable. So I'm not going to give him shit for it.
Purest of ironies.
But we are here together. Andrew, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? We met through the Twitter sphere.
Yes.
You like movies?
Yes, very much so. Well, currently, as of right now, I am a film student. I am very close to finally getting out of school and finally contributing work in the real world. But for the past few years, I've been a writer at multiple websites. I've bounced from here and there, but my current home is Geeks of Color. And it is through there that I have published many reviews, think pieces, etc. And yeah, I just love being on the internet, meeting people just like yourself. It's one of the best ways to, I guess, get your name out there and network in the right way, because you never be surprised on who you meet and who you can actually be really cool with, on such random websites such as Twitter and etc. And that's how I'm here. That's how I got here.
Yeah, Twitter and Tumblr and Facebook and all those things, they can be kind of draining, and everyone says social media is bad, and in a way it totally kind of is. Twitter, get rid of the Nazis.
Yeah,
what the fuck?
There's a lot of really tight knit communities, and I'm not talking about film Twitter, quote unquote, but there are other sub communities and subsets of people who are legit really connected with each other, and who actually make great business efforts, etc. to get their brand out there. So it can be very useful and very also beneficial in a personal way and beneficial in a professional way.
Yeah, exactly. And to shift into a little heavier gear before we get into the show, we should acknowledge that the day of this recording, Stan Lee passed away, unfortunately, and he was a big figure in our community. Film, Twitter, film, everything, and comic books. He left a big impression on everyone. He drove the industry in a big way, from his Marvel movie cameos to his admittedly complicated legacy. But without a doubt, I think he was one of the more progressive icons in the comic industry in promoting positivity, community, diversity. There's a clip I'll try to find it and plug it in here. I don't know where it is right now or what show it was on, but he was talking to Kevin Smith about Spider-Man.
And it's very one of the very few comic book characters, even back then, that was covered from head to toe. If Captain America, you still have this much of his face. Spider-Man's completely enveloped in his costume.
Oh, you know the good thing about that?
Yes.
You could be any kid.
Yeah.
You could be black. You could be Asian. You could be Indian. You could be anything, and imagine you were in that costume.
Right.
So I think that made it relevant to everybody everywhere.
Right.
And that was accidental. I mean, I don't think we planned it that way, but it was very fortuitous.
And that's very remarkable, and I think we should take that lesson above all from his works and his life. So if you guys have anything you would like to say about Stan Lee?
The other thing that's really interesting about Stan Lee is the fact that he didn't think that this is how his life was going to be. He originally thought he was going to be the next great, American author, and that's why his name is Stan Lee, because he wanted to hide his name and everything like that. Because his name is Stan Leibowitz. and he ended up cutting it down so that way when he actually wrote his book, he could go under his own name instead of having to be Stan Lee. But also, I just think it's so iconic on how much he made comic books grow. You know, he was able to surpass what was commonly sold as comic books, and how they were just, you know, made for kids and they were nonsense and everything like that, and turn them into real journalism and turn them into real novels. And I think that's pretty impressive on the mark that he's laid on the comic book industry and even the movie industry today.
Yeah, really quick. I think that's interesting that he wanted to become the next great American author, because in his own way, I'd argue that he kind of did,
Yeah, he
given
absolutely.
his material.
He absolutely did, and Stan Lee even said back in the day that he used to be embarrassed of the fact that he was a comic book writer. You know, people used to not take him seriously or anything like that, and that's really amazing that in the 94 years that he had, you know, he turned himself into not only one of the, you know, most iconic things, but he became a brand. He became, you know, something that, like, as soon as you see Stan Lee marked on something, you were immediately interested in, and you knew exactly what it was. You automatically knew it had to do something with comic book or geek culture.
Yeah. Andrew, thoughts?
Yes. You guys have hit all like the good points so far. It's currently the afternoon over here, and there have been plenty of hours to digest his passing. And I've noticed something very different about his passing in particular compared to like other big celebrities and icons. Is that it feels more. It's not as sad as I thought it would be, because we all knew he was like at a very old age, and I'm not saying that we all saw it coming, but this does feel more celebratory compared to other passings, I feel, because all day today people have been posting, they've been sharing their photos that they've taken with him, all these, they've been sharing their stories of times that they've met him, the things he's done, everything that he's signed, everything that he's left his like thumbprints on.
Mm-hmm.
And it really does feel like, yeah, physically he's not here anymore, but because this dude is literally, he's literally like one of the dads of like modern pop culture, like in general, not just like geek culture, but like pop culture in general, because his characters, they're so ingrained, like in film, television, they've gone beyond the pages that they were created on. So it kind of feels like, you know what, like I'm sad that I'm not gonna be able to see him like in person anymore, but he I don't feel like he's gone. And I don't ever think it's gonna feel like he's ever gonna really be gone, because he's created such a monumental effect. So it's bittersweet, I feel, in a good way, because there's not a lot of other people on this planet who have had such a career that they're never gonna be felt like they're not there. If that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah,
He was too big of an icon to ever feel like he was just gonna be gone from the world. His work will live on, and his fans will live on.
I think it's special for him because like for like who knows, not just like the MCU, like who knows when that is gonna end finally, and how many years in the future, but like every movie his name is still gonna like be on it, regardless if regardless if he's not even here. His like, for whatever reason, you're still gonna feel his presence, whether it's television, film, the books that come out, animation, etc. Like you're still gonna feel like he's there, and I think that's really special.
Yeah, it really is. So rest in peace, Stan Lee. Condolences to his loved ones and to the rest of movie, film, comics, every member of those communities as well, because I know we've all felt it today. But moving on to the rest of the show, we're here to talk about another work of pop culture that's has another grandstanding legacy by another great writer who I think also will have a complicated legacy. Maybe a little more complicated. I don't want to poo poo her too much. J.K. Rowling is the figurehead of the Harry Potter world, novels, movies. Uh, I think they're video games, right? I'm not too
they're
familiar, but
yeah
they
there are
probably
video
are.
games.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Um, and just a heads up, we won't be reviewing the new Fantastic Beasts film. So we thought we would take a look back at the Harry Potter series of films, talk a little bit about our favorite moments, and I wanted to open it up with where it all might have gone wrong, because I think it's safe to say Fantastic Beasts, the first film, didn't hit with everyone maybe the way we kind of hoped it would. It didn't really bring back the magic. I will say, just up top, I was very negative in anticipation for that movie, and I found myself enjoying it, but also feeling like the worst thing that's ever happened to me is watching Colin Farrell slowly morph into Johnny Depp. So, Andrew, how big of a Harry Potter fan are you? Did you like Fantastic Beasts? Tell me your feelings and thoughts.
I've never read a book, but I literally grew up with this franchise because I know a lot of people say that. I'm not special because I get to say that. I understand that. But when I was a kid, I didn't have before I had a Blu-ray player, before I had a DVD player in general. Uh, well, I had a DVD player. I had only like 5 to 10 DVDs that I would just watch on repeat constantly. And this was before I movies a lot because I was so young. And two of them were The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and I want to say Jurassic Park and the second Jurassic Park. It's something about duos, so strange. And I remember that the other two was the first two Harry Potter movies, and I would just watch them on repeat. And those movies are long, so there would go most of my day. I would just sit down and I would just keep watching them. And the first Harry Potter movie I saw in theaters was Prisoner of Azkaban, and that is a
Nice.
memory that I will never forget because I was like, holy crap! I feel like this is not over. I feel like there's no going back from here. So ever since then, of course, I've seen all the movies. I've seen it a bunch of times. For a few years, I would have a holiday tradition where I would watch all the Star Wars movies in a row. I'd watch all the Harry Potter movies in a row at home. I'd watch all the Indiana Jones movies in a row. Just screw it because it's a tradition. Um, I did think Fantastic Beasts was fine when this was announced. I wasn't really negative because I was like, all right. I mean, it was bound to happen anyway with the current climate of Hollywood. Everything's getting rebooted. There's prequels, sequels, etc. But yeah, I did feel like that movie left me wanting a little bit more because it was like if Harry Potter, if the films are your favorite pizza place, if you love Domino's, etc. The Harry Potter movies are your Domino's, then I guess Fantastic Beasts is like Little Caesars, where you're like, you know what, it's not bad. Fill me up for now, but yeah, I rather much had Domino's.
Oh wow, I love that. Nick, your thoughts on the Harry Potter series and your thoughts on Fantastic Beasts?
Well, just like Andrew said, I mean, we've all kind of grown up with the Harry Potter series. I mean, from movies, I mean, from books all the way to movies and everything else. I mean, some of the Harry Potter books are actually, required reading now inside of some elementary schools, just because of, how good they are for kids and everything like that, and how interesting they are. But for Fantastic Beasts, I mean, I love those movies. I remember watching Sorcerer's Stone in the movie theater. That was awesome. Also playing through the entire DVD where you had secret entrances to get to the special features. You had to do a bunch of other different things.
Snap.
Deep cut,
Yeah,
love it.
if you. Yeah, if anybody who actually had the old DVD, you had to, watch the movie. You had to see how the exact bricks that they pushed to get to Diagon Alley, and then in the special features, when you clicked it, you had to do the exact same thing in order to get to Diagon Alley and get to the special features on the DVD. So I mean, that was really cool, and it really immersed you into the world. And you really also, as a young kid, you realized I got to keep watching this movies in order for me to figure out how to get to the special features. But the one thing that was really interesting about Fantastic Beasts is that I get what they were trying to do. They're putting you in decades before Harry Potter even takes place, taking you into a brand new world, and you get to see how, the advancements of magic kind of happened and everything like that. I just think that, if you were going to do Fantastic Beasts, and stuff like that. They should have gone completely wacky with it. You know, they should have just gone with like following him very much, maybe like kind of like Lord of the Rings esque, where like he's traveling the world trying to find fantastic beasts. Which are like learning how to tame them, you know, make like actually get further in depth into like the magical realm of the world and everything else. I think that, you know, they kind of shortchanged themselves by going, oh yeah, we're taking a bunch of these magical creatures and putting them in a city where now they have to deal with some form of, you know, dark, you know, like a dark spirit type of magical creature that comes from like trying to subdue, like hold back your magical powers and everything else. It was an interesting idea. I just feel like it was poorly executed. You know, the movie at certain times just got kind of boring and it got kind of stale.
Yeah, I think the idea that you just brought up, it's basically about like, you know, repressing like individuality, you
Yeah,
know, and that that really shocked me in that movie because I was like, hey, this is really interesting. It's a little dark, doesn't really mix with the magical Pokemon thing you got going on with Newt, but like
yeah,
how they ended up tying that around with like, oh, because he's able to have like such like empathy for these creatures. Of course, he's going to be the one to have empathy for Credence, who's like basically going through a mental breakdown right now. And I
yeah,
thought that was so interesting. The problem is, I think, anyways, that like you're seeing another rise of another dark wizard, and it's becoming another. It's becoming arguably the least interesting part of the original Harry Potter films. Not in ideas, just in execution. I think. Not that they're bad there either. Just I think J.K. Rowling might be a little too self-congratulatory with her
uh,
approach to like rise of fascism, but she doesn't also like if you Andrew and I follow her or have been aware of her on Twitter, so I think we kind of seen like her politics seeping through, and
Yeah,
given how she treats certain aspects in the real world, it doesn't shock
she's
me
on a real high
anymore
horse. Yeah,
that some of the traits of her villainous characters in Fantastic Beasts and Harry Potter kind of maybe don't hold up to much scrutiny, and it
right.
it it, it leaves a sour taste in my mouth. And because I have become like really interested in the Harry Potter world, the Wizarding world, you know, like I really love the idea of just a softer franchise exploring the world with like creatures and new environments. Like, what did New York look like in the 1920s? Great, I'm sold. What did Paris look like in the 1930s? That's apparently what the sequel is about.
yeah.
I'm not sure, but that's interesting to me. But if we're tracing all this along for the next rise of a dark wizard, a story that we know is inconsequential. Um, that's kind of the bane of existence for all prequel films. You know, just
See, in
that's an
that,
uphill battle for any creator to come up with. You need something else to replace that struggle. Okay, the struggle's already finished by the time we get to the original series of films. Then you got to have some really great characters, you know, or some really compelling ideas. And for Fantastic Beasts, I liked Newt Scamander, and I'm not really an Eddie Redmayne fan,
yeah.
but that's not a character you hang a series of 5 films on, you know. So
Well,
like, what's the draw here?
that's the thing. That's the reason why I thought if they would have just made the movie much more of like, you know, I think you nailed it on the head where it's more Pokemon esque, where Eddie Redmayne or you know you have a more charismatic kind of actor, and they're kind of traveling the world, and he's capturing he's capturing these beasts. Because like people are scared of him, or because they're terrorizing cities and stuff like that, and he's trying to find them a better home. I think that would have been kind of a more interesting idea because I know that they're trying to get into like, oh yeah, there's another dark wizard and everything like that, but that's the problem though. You know that everything that happens right now is okay because you know in the Harry Potter thing, Dumbledore's alive. Newt Scamander, he's alive. What was it? You know that they defeated Grindelwald. You know that all this stuff turns out okay. So all the stakes that are kind of in the movie of like, oh, will they survive? Will Grindelwald be able to complete his dastardly deed? All kind of falls flat because no, none of this, none of it really matters because they're gonna succeed.
Yeah, and I try not to like pin that on movies too often because like when someone says you enjoy Die Hard because you don't know if John McClane's gonna live or die. I've seen Die Hard like 50 times and I enjoy it just as much. I know he's not gonna die, but
Yeah,
like for a story like this, you really have to have something truly special to explore. And like I think honestly one of the other problems is that there's no like real difference between Voldemort and Grindelwald. You know, I mean, Johnny Depp's like an actual monster, and Ralph Fiennes is apparently a pretty good guy, or at least interesting. So like, there's no difference between their characters. So, and we've already seen the rise of like that wizard supremacy in this series, you know, and it was done really well, I'd argue. So like, what it just seems like redundant here. And then of course the elephant in the room, Johnny Depp is, you know, a dick. So I don't want to see him in one movie, let alone 5. So I don't know. I mean, it feels like a big missed opportunity to do something interesting. Personally, I think the Hobbit films also kind of suffer by not being more kid friendly. You know, because the Hobbit book, it's for kids. It's got some serious messages, but it's a kid's book. It's a great kid's book. But I think that's the thing these prequel movies all kind of end up shooting themselves in the foot with. And I think the Star Wars prequels, excuse me, kind of they can't decide whether they want to be hardcore political dramas or you know, wacky Jar Jar Binks adventures. And I'm a Star Wars prequels fan now, but I see some tonal inconsistency.
I think the other thing that's also kind of an issue is that when you just kind of have these stories that are kind of, you know, talked about in the background or anything like that, it's a lot of leaving it up to the imagination, because no matter whatever they come up with is never going to be as cool as what I come up with in my own head. So I think people just aren't in general going to like the you know, the story that they're going to tell, because the story that I've made up for myself is always going to be way cooler than the story that you're going to tell me. And that's the shitty part about prequels. That always seems to happen. That happened inside of the Star Wars prequels. That happens inside of this prequel. This happens in most prequels where, you know, people have an idea of what the prequel should look like, and it just isn't that.
Right. I think J.K. like bouncing off of that note, J.K. Rowling really set herself up, because people that know Potter lore, they know that Dumbledore and Grindelwald had one of, like, quote unquote, like the most epic like duels of all like wizarding history, etc. And people talk about that like, oh yeah, that happened a long time ago. It was so epic, etc. Blah blah blah. If you're setting yourself up to like finally show that, like, oh my god, I don't know, man, like there's only like people, I think that's what's so cool about establishing that myth, that readers and like consumers like ourselves would be like, wow, I wonder how that shit went down, like, oh my god. But if you're just gonna show it, it's probably not gonna be as cool as I thought it was gonna be, because especially with this, because you have hyped this like duel for like years already, and it's probably going to take you like how many movies to finally get to this duel. So if I'm sitting through these Fantastic Beasts movies, I'm like, all right, I know they're going to fight eventually, and I know it's supposed to be epic, but by the time you get there, are people going to still be aboard with this franchise, and is it actually going to be cool, or is it just going to be like people like flowing their hands around in like some kind of like boring setting, etc.
Well,
yeah.
She really kind of set herself up for, I don't know. I don't want to doubt her.
No. You totally bring up a really great point, because like to take it back to Star Wars for a second, a lot of people were like, "Oh, Snoke is Darth Plagueis reborn," and or people want to see that story where Darth Plagueis is killed by his apprentice. But I mean, like for all its flaws, Revenge of the Sith, I think, leaves a really interesting note in that myth that Palpatine tells Anakin. You get everything you need to know about that character, because it's implied that he is the apprentice that killed Darth Plagueis, right?
Yes.
And you get everything you need to know from that. You don't need to actually see it. You get that this man is that much, like, he's embodied by that much evil, and he's willing to kill someone who was thought to be unkillable.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you need. You don't need to see that character again. That fits that character. It fits that world that that film is showing us. It fits the character progression for Anakin, and that's it. Sometimes that's all you need. You know what's really interesting? Coming up with completely new characters and settings.
Well,
and
that's the one reason why I really like stories like kind of what like the Star Wars universe is doing for like their TV shows, where they're telling stories that have nothing to do with their main characters. You know, they have a main plot line, but you know now they're telling stories about either the rebellion, or they're telling stories about like this like small offshoot of people. I think it would have been really cool if, instead of going, okay, we're going to go back 75, 100 years into the past, if you're going to already go that far into the past, why not go even further? Why not go into before the Ministry of Magics were even like created? Go back to where it was kind of like a lawless, where you have like just people using magic, and nobody was around to kind of like keep all this shit under wraps or anything like that. That's a really interesting movie to kind of see like, oh, okay, so this is how they created the Ministries of Magic. This is how they created different stuff like that. That's really interesting. It has nothing to do with Dumbledore. It has nothing to do with Harry Potter. It has nothing to do with, Grindelwald. It has nothing to do with these characters that you've already met. You get to know and understand brand new characters and their world. And while also going further in depth with what exactly is going on in the world.
You know what? This reminds me a lot of what year did Prometheus come out? Was that 2011?
2012.
2012.
No, that was 2012. Right. The years leading up to that movie, I remember people were like, every other week on like the internet, they'd be like, "Is Prometheus an alien prequel? Prometheus is not an alien prequel." There'd be all these like hot takes, and Ridley Scott would be like, "It's not a prequel. It's just a story that takes place before Alien in the same universe."
Yeah.
Obviously, that was correct up until like the very end. We're like, "Oh yeah, this kind of is an alien prequel." I remember the same thing. J.K. Rowling, she was doing the same thing. She was Fantastic Beasts is a story in the Harry Potter universe that has nothing to do with Harry Potter. I was like, all right, cool, I'm down. And then when you watch that movie up until the very end, you're like, you know what? This is probably gonna tie back with Harry somehow because you're teasing Dumbledore, you're teasing all of this, and I wouldn't be surprised if like I don't know what the timeline we're living is pretty wild. So who knows if we do actually reach it to 5 Fantastic Beasts movies? But let's say we do, because that's the current plan, right? There's like there's 5, right?
There's plans for
Right.
3 more after this. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if at the end of the very one we're like we see like baby Harry or some stupid something like we tie it all the way back and tie it in a nice neat bow, but the bow's ugly because you bought it at like a discount store and it's not what you wanted. But you know what? You're gonna take it anyway. You know why? Because you're a fan and you love Harry Potter and everything has to tie back with Harry Potter, and this is what you came for. So eat it, consumers. You made J.K. Rowling rich. Who cares?
But the one problem that you have when you're telling the story like this is that you start finding that you're writing yourself into a corner.
Absolutely.
I can't do anything with said character because in Harry Potter they're like this, or this person's alive, or this person's here, or like even inside this new movie Nagini is what was it? She was originally a person who turned into an animagus.
I'm so sorry. That's the worst.
Wait. Okay, let me just say, when I found that out, I wasn't. I do think that it's problematic. There are very legitimate reasons why people of a certain descent should be very concerned about this representation, quote unquote. But that's a whole other conversation. But the first thing that came to my head was, why can't Nagini just be a snake? Why can't it just be a snake? And that's the first thing. And don't get me wrong, I go back to Prometheus and Alien Covenant. I do think those are better movies. I do like those movies a lot more. But I still have this.
Good man.
I still have this question: why couldn't the xenomorphs just be an alien? Yeah, why can't it just be like some kind of space animal? They're just it's no like why can't Nagini? It's just a snake. Like why can't it be like why? Like why? It's just a snake. Like there's no explanation. There it is. It's a snake. There's
just an evil snake, right?
Yeah, that's it. Like why do you?
We've already seen Voldemort use one in Chamber of Secrets too. The giant evil snake. This
you already had it. You already had it explained.
The basilisk.
It's just a snake. Why can't it just be a snake? I'm so confused. Like
but to the credit of because as much as I love the Alien prequels, I think they're easily just as flawed as the Star Wars prequels. But to George Lucas and Ridley Scott's credit, all the decisions in those movies to tie everything back to the original narrative are all thematically tied. They're all meant for bigger ideas. Whether or not they're functional ideas or not is completely up to the viewer. But they're trying something. I don't think J.K. Rowling has really. I don't think she's stuck to that. Not everything needs to be like some great grand idea, but I think she's undercutting her own work and narrative with the decisions that she's made, because it just becomes more complicated. More complicated doesn't mean a better story, and that's a real bummer.
To be totally honest, if you were really going to make a story kind of like this or anything like that, then why not just have it where Newt Scamander is going to Hogwarts? If you were really going to try and like make something interesting, why not just go back to Hogwarts and kind of like show what's going on there during this time of uncertainty or anything like that. I mean,
really it should have taken place at another school across the planet.
No, yeah, honestly, it should
have been something totally different.
It should have been something totally different. I really like the idea of him just being a Pokemon master and going around the world and trying to like capture fucking mystic
wait, Nick.
And shit. Huh?
Wait, Nick, you're telling me that you actually like the idea of a movie titled Fantastic Beasts to actually be about Fantastic Beasts?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
I would have really appreciated it.
Are you
on drugs?
Yeah, are you mad? This has to tie back to Harry.
Well, no, because I think they could have done things like Where All the Wild Things Are, or like they could have like done they could have just done a lot of really cool, interesting shit with like the magical creatures. All the magical creatures are really interesting and stuff like that.
How wild would it be? Yeah. No, finish your thought. I just want to say something. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I think that all the magical creatures are interesting, and they can, they can funnel an entire movie, and you can, if you really want to like squeeze Grindelwald in there, and you really want to do that or anything like that, you can even have it that fantastic, like these animals are normally righteous. I mean, are normally good, and there's some form of dark magic that's corrupting them, and stuff like that, and that's why they're attacking people, or that's why they're attacking cities. And stuff like that, and then it's this giant thing of like, well, who's doing this? And it's a giant conspiracy. And you can still have your Fantastic Beasts. You can still do your your Grindelwald, and you can still tie it in correctly without having to do this entire thing of like, oh well, we're taking place in a city, and we have to be hiding everything, and it's just a waste of fucking time.
Yeah, I got to move the conversation on really quick.
Hold on, let me just say something. How mad would it be?
Oh yeah.
If we actually had a Fantastic Beasts movie about a Fantastic Beasts that didn't all take place in the suitcase, because the first movie I actually think has pretty good production design and like costume design. It's like pretty cool. Like when you go in the suitcase, everything looks cool. But how about we actually go to those places, and all the creature designs were very good in my opinion. Like Niffler is really cute. The big rhino thing is cool.
I would agree.
But what if you just like focused more on like practical effects, like the new Star Wars movies, and like you actually put people in costumes, and you have animatronics, you have less like CGI. Like you have like 5 guys in a giant rhino thing moving it around.
Well,
and that would be like, to me, amazing. But I don't. That's like in a different world.
Well, it's not like they can't afford it.
Well, yeah. I'll tell you one thing. The price triples. First off, like them doing CGI and them actually having like animatronic CGI is way cheaper than actually like having an animatronic person there, or having like a puppeteer or something like that. I mean, that's the whole reason why like the Star Wars budgets are so expensive. Like there's so much nowadays. But the bigger thing is that I feel like even then, like there was nothing wrong with that. I feel like they should have made it that each beast had its own character. They should have been characters on their own. And stuff like that, and that way you actually
iconic, yeah,
and that way you could have made a connection to these actual beasts, and like if they would have had like their own like trials and tribulations, they had their own like problems that Newt had to help solve. That way by the end of it you gave a shit about these beasts, not just they're kind of cute, and that's it. But
yep, could have been next Pokemon, dude. Money wasted.
It is
wasted money.
Yeah, honestly,
we've been kind of ragging on it right now, but we did mention that we're huge fans of the Harry Potter. So why don't we take the time to talk about some of our favorite memories right now? I'm gonna pull up some Twitter ones while Nick, you could go ahead right now. What do you think is the best film in the series, the entire 8-chapter series?
Best film, I would probably think, is Prisoner of Azkaban.
My man.
I really love Prisoner of Azkaban. I love the juxtaposition of just like, oh yeah, the past couple of movies have been like really cheery and really happy, and then all of a sudden this movie is just dark. It is just like, oh yeah, they were children. That's why those movies are so happy. They're becoming adults now. And now they're dealing with the real world. Like they're actually dealing with like outer forces and like how exactly the wizarding world reacts to like dark wizards and everything else. And I really enjoyed that. And it's also it's a great moment where you kind of see Harry, Hermione, and Ron all kind of coming into their own. Where it's like, oh yeah, these are the type of people that we're going to grow into. These are the values that we are going to have, and stuff like that. And yeah, I really think that's really cool. To be totally honest, do you want me just to run through it, like film, moment, and character?
We'll go around the panel. Andrew, what do you think is the best film in the series?
I will also have to agree with Prisoner of Azkaban.
Okay,
And
so we all
this
agree.
might turn into Prisoner of Azkaban chill hour, but screw it.
I fucking love that movie. That movie's dope as fuck.
People will be like, "Oh, that's the first movie you saw in the theater. That's why yes, that has a lot to do with it, obviously." But bouncing off of what Nick said, that movie does feel like it's gonna set you up for what the rest of the series is gonna be like. Also, at the same time, having its own unique aesthetics, tones. It's very much different than the other ones, even though it does set you up. Like, yeah, they're gonna be they're gonna be young adults from now on. They're growing up.
Mm-hmm.
There's still not a movie that's like it. There's all as a combination of cinematography, lighting, costumes, the score. It all meshes so perfectly together, and it's the most gothic out of the Harry Potter movies. I want to say,
yeah,
which is you wouldn't think it would be that book. Probably you probably think it'd be like the other more mature ones, quote unquote. But I think that's why it resonated with me for so long, because as a kid, and even like that movie did actually like creep me out and scare the crap out of me at certain points, and I think that's very impressive. Again, it does that while also still being a kids movie, like what you said about the Hobbit book.
Mm-hmm.
It's there's adult themes, but it's still at its core a children's story. I think this movie does the balance very well.
I think it's really funny because Prisoner of Azkaban is actually the first movie where they changed the director for the first time, and they give it to a new director. But even the new director, he actually gave them an assignment where he went to each actor and he was like, I want you to write an essay about where you think your character is at this point and like how exactly they would react to the specific things that's going on. And apparently, Rupert Grint, the guy who plays Ron, he never turned in the essay. Emma Watson turned in like a 10-page essay about like what exactly like she thought her character would be going through, and then Daniel Radcliffe, he like turned in like a 3-page essay that looks like it was written like probably like an hour before he was supposed to turn it in. And stuff like that.
It's perfect for those characters.
Yeah, and like he thought it was like really funny because he was like that he goes, that alone immediately told me who they think these characters are. That Ron would never turn in the essay. He would just go like, yeah, fuck the essay. Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter, he's busy with other shit. And that's why he can't finish his homework. And then Hermione Granger is much more of like, I'm going to finish this the best I possibly can. And I think that's really interesting. And I think that's the main reason why the movie looks so different is because first off, the director, and also because, these guys are just getting older. They're at this point, they're in their teens, they're going through different stuff. They have different life experiences. So it was really cool.
It's the first one where you're like, oh, these kids are shooting up. Like, even like when I was younger, I was like, hey, they're bigger in this one. Like it's a noticeable difference. And yeah, the director, Alfonso Cuarón, director of little movies like Gravity, Children of Men, nothing big, upcoming Roma. He's only one of the greatest living filmmakers of all time. He really brings a totally different sensibility to the movies. I think Chris Columbus, I have mixed feelings on him as a director. I think his Harry Potter work is outstanding. It's the best he's ever done. But Cuarón's in a different ballpark, man. He's playing a different sport compared to that guy. Like, the quality increase is kind of unfair. The lingering moments between the characters when they're sad or happy, I will lead us into best moments. in a second, but my favorite moment in the entire series is just when Hagrid encourages Harry to go ride Buckbeak. I was like, oh, it's no biggie. And Harry's the weight of the world's on his shoulders for his entire life up to this point and after,
Mhm.
arguably. And he has no moment to himself, no moment of reprieve. But when he takes off on Buckbeak, he just has like a minute to himself, just soaring over the grounds of Hogwarts as John Williams themes cue up in the background and blare, and
Yeah.
he has this moment to just smile, and it's beautiful. It brings a tear to my eye just talking about it. What are some favorite moments in the
Well,
film series for you guys?
well, I think also what changed Prisoner of Azkaban and why it was also really so good is because there was a change in Dumbledore as well. I mean, Michael Gambon.
Well, it's a little different, I think.
Well, no,
Yeah.
but I mean, unfortunately, Dumbledore, which the actor who played Dumbledore, he did pass away during the during the break and everything like that, and that was unforeseeable. But Michael Gambon coming in, he gave like a different persona to what Dumbledore was and who he was, because what was it, the Dumbledore beforehand, he was much more of a playful Dumbledore. He was a lot more mysterious and like playful and everything like that, whereas Michael Gambon was much more of like he was much more of the professor. It feels like he kind of feels like he's trying to teach them a lesson throughout the entire movie. Like he's continuously trying to like get a message across them, and I think that's kind of interesting as well. He gives it a little bit more of a darker tone.
I'd argue he also makes him feel a little more human. Not to diss the previous Dumbledore, rest in peace, who was very
Mm-hmm.
great. But this is a guy I could imagine having a conversation with Michael Gambon. The previous one, that's like Gandalf, man. I'm never gonna meet that. I could
Richard,
imagine like bumping into this dude like in downtown London.
his name is Richard Harris.
Yes.
Richard Harris. He passed away during the time, during it. But and everything like that. And I think he really does a really good job of like levitating everything and kind of making it a little more adult. And yeah, he does a really
Hmm.
great job. Um, yeah.
You guys got favorite moments? I'm gonna start reading off some from Twitter in a
Uh,
second.
yeah. I mean, for me, my favorite character is always going to be Alan Rickman's Snape.
Moments, but go off.
Oh, but well, that's that. Well, no. But that was leading into my favorite moment. That's
Okay,
why.
okay. Go
Like
ahead.
that was that. Which the reason being is because I think that the idea of, um, especially when you get to the Deathly Hallows Part 2, when you actually see Snape's intention for the entire series, where you find out that he hasn't been the big bad. He hasn't been this like minor villain that Harry Potter's been, trying to thwart. That's been trying to thwart Harry Potter for all these years and everything like that. His entire, academic life. Whereas he's been kind of like his guardian. He's been kind of his protector for all these years, and it's all because he like truly loved his mom, and he would do anything to protect Harry Potter. And it's a huge like everything you knew about that character just immediately changed. And especially knowing that J.K. Rowling told Alan Rickman that their first day on set, like she actually went to Alan Rickman and told him, this is what's going to happen at the very end of this series. This is what your character is doing. And Alan Rickman was playing that the entire time he was being Snape, and I think that's amazing. Like he was keeping that secret for so long, and he just couldn't wait for everybody to know it. It was great.
I'm gonna stick with Prisoner of Azkaban. The werewolf in the third act, the transformation, that, like I said, that scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. And looking back on it now, it's like, man, this scene is so dope. The way it's shot. I think specifically what sticks with me the most is the design of the werewolf, because up until that point, I personally had never seen, because the werewolf is such an iconic like movie monster. It's been
Mm-hmm.
done so many times. It's instantly recognizable, but I have never seen a werewolf like that. And Harry Potter is such a special universe where throughout the movie, going up, leading up to that point, where I was like, I wonder what a werewolf looks like. Is it big? It's probably gonna look more like traditional. But I do stand the skinny, lanky, diseased werewolf design. I think it's great. It's a memory that like is still imprinted in my head, and like I was legit scared like when they run away from it up to the point where Buckbeak comes and saves them. I think that has to be my favorite moment, specifically because of how it. I was very how I was so engaged with it when I first saw it.
That
Well,
that brings up an interesting point on that. Like the werewolf isn't romantic in this. Like, we see a lot of fantasy horror stuff kind of romanticize the movie monsters. And I don't have a problem with that. You know, the quality is up and down, fluctuates in every genre.
Yeah.
But for this one, the werewolf is clearly like it's a tragic circumstance, and it looks unhealthy, you know, and it looks like sickly and like gangly and stuff, and like that's yeah, that design really drives home the tragedy of Professor Lupin in a big way. Again, that movie's so good. We could talk about like every scene for like an hour, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring up some other ones right now. Kevin Lee at Clee_film review on Twitter said the very opening of Half Blood Prince, the photography is bleached, over contrasted, and they sound like explosions to Harry. He's still grieving over Sirius as Dumbledore puts his hand on Harry's shoulder, signifying their relationship in this installment. And then that choir music. Half Blood Prince is a crazy underrated movie, I think. It
It
has
is
the
really
least
good.
action of the series, but I think David Yates is a director I'm kind of mixed on, but I think that's his best work as a film director
No,
for a big
yeah.
way.
I think Half Blood Prince is the movie that really puts Professor Snape in like the forefront of like, oh yeah, like this is gonna be like this is like gonna be your main like person that you're gonna have to deal with, and I really
that
love
really
it.
solidifies him as like, oh yeah, he's gonna be in the end game. Like he has
Yeah,
a big part to play in
like
this.
he's without him you don't get to the end game, and you're gonna need
Yeah.
him and everything like that, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Andrew Boyd Allen at A_B_Allen on Twitter. The scene in Half Blood Prince, another one, where the students surround Dumbledore's body in the courtyard is beautiful. Also, the scene in Deathly Hallows where Harry and Hermione dance together in the tent is a really great, nuanced character moment.
Oh yeah,
Totally agree with Half Blood Prince. Deathly Hallows Part 1, I think, is incredibly underappreciated for its use of character.
Oh yeah.
It's people say like their movies are like, oh, that's a character-driven story. Half Blood or Deathly Hallows Part 1 really is one of the pinnacles of that for like blockbuster filmmaking, I think.
well,
In
I
that
mean,
Absolutely.
everything is driven by character in that.
oh yeah, there's not that much action going on, and there's not a whole lot like them like world traveling or doing anything like that, but there is a lot of like growth. There's a lot of like Ron and Hermione coming to terms with the fact that they love each other. Ron trying to figure out that he does have some some animosity towards Harry, and it's just a really good movie.
Yeah. Another one, then I'll move over to favorite characters for me and Andrew. At Good Hunter Abbey at Twitter, every second David Thewlis is on screen in Azkaban. And yes,
Yeah.
I saw a tweet going around comparing David Thewlis' performance to Alec Guinness in the original Star Wars, like to what Alec Guinness was for Ben Kenobi,
Uh,
that he was to Professor Lupin. And that never really like even crossed my mind, that sort of comparison. But in hindsight, I'd go to bat for that. I would defend that
oh yeah,
that take
absolutely.
entirely. He's outstanding in that.
Yeah, he does. I can totally. I very as soon as you said like Alec, Ben Kenobi, I was like, yeah, absolutely. He is the teacher. He's the one that's trying to pass on this knowledge while also kind of giving him information about his parents, something that he doesn't really know. Which I like. This is the person this is the closest connection he's ever had to his parents through another human being that's actually being nice to him, and
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Andrew, favorite character in the series?
That is a very hard question.
Do you want me to go first?
No. I can go. I
Okay,
can
okay.
go. Okay. So thinking about this, I kind of want to lean towards because I'm trying to let's try to straight. Prisoner of Azkaban is the GOAT. We all admit that. No contest. Let me try to bounce around somewhere another movie, and I think probably because I watch those movies on repeat, but Gilderoy Lockhart is the boy. Is that performance again? Never gonna forget. Hilarious. I think it's so fun to see. Why am I like blanking out?
Kenneth Branagh?
Yeah, Kenneth Branagh in such a role because he's well known for being like a thespian. Like he's like dipped his toes into Shakespeare like countless times before. and I think that role suited him like very, very well. It's like perfect casting, and I think it makes like Chamber of Secrets is a long. I think it's the longest movie out of all of them.
Somehow, yes.
Somehow it's the longest movie, but popping that DVD in, I was like, you know what, Giltry Lockhart's in this. I'm gonna get through this. You know why? Because he's the boy.
Oh, that's a great character and performance. The director of such classics as Hamlet, Thor, the Cinderella remake, uh, his Murder on the Orient Express remake is also kind of great, and I wish more people would check it out.
I actually really like that.
Murder mysteries.
I really like that movie.
Johnny Depp.
Oh yeah, me too.
is
I
in
love
it,
it. Oh yeah, but I mean, for everyone who doesn't
spoiler.
know the twist to Murder on the Orient
Yes.
Express, I didn't going into it, so I had a good time.
Oh yeah, I didn't. I
He
didn't
is
know it either.
murdered by everyone. So if you hate Johnny Depp, watch Murder on the Orient Express.
That was Bruno's gift to cinema.
Oh yeah, that makes it like objectively his best movie.
Just
some
everybody
more-
just massacred fucking Johnny Depp.
Yeah, that's cinema right there, man. Some more favorite moments on Twitter. At Steel131, Harry finding out Snape loved his mother. Heartbreaking.
Told you.
At Flop-Haired Wuss, the flight scene with Buckbeak. Hell yeah. At Play_Champion, Harrison Brockwell. Harry and Hermione's dance is the epitome of the series. It drives home how much has been taken from these children and what's on the line if they fail. It's also a heartbreaking acknowledgement of what can never be between those two. Deathly Hallows Part 1 is my favorite movie of all time. That's a hell of an ending right there. I was like, oh man, this is going... Oh, there it is. Yeah, that makes sense. Favorite moment I already gave. Best character, Lupin's probably my favorite, but I'm gonna move away from Prisoner of Azkaban. Luna Lovegood. I really love that character.
Oh.
She's an outcast and a perfect fit for Harry and his friends. And as much as I appreciate the actors' relationships and the chemistry, I will never understand on the page how Hermione ended up with Ron and how Harry ended up with Ginny. I'm sorry. I love these movies, and people from the bottom of my heart, in the movies, Harry should have ended up with Luna. That is bananas to me that did not play out that way. But no, I on her own, she's a fantastic character. She really drives, I think, a lot of the eccentricity that is kind of brought to the later films, which might kind of be a burden on people. But I think she's one of the reasons and people that inspires Harry and his friends to always be true to themselves and the fights that they have to struggle through in those last four films in a big way. I really like that character and performance, and I would watch a spin-off movie about Luna. There you go. That's how much I like the character. Another favorite moment, at Mark Price 21, Wizard Chess, the Sorting Hat and Harry, Ollivanders, and just the little things that color the world nicely. I would agree.
The other character which I would really go for is probably Gary Oldman as Sirius Black.
Oh fuck yeah!
Like Gary Oldman is just a great actor in general. He's fucking amazing. Like anything Gary Oldman's in, I'll fucking watch it.
And long time friend and fan of the show, at Ethan Williams, the entire Felix's sequence in The Half-Blood Prince is hysterical, and yeah, I completely agree. That's laugh out loud funny. Last one before we move on to the last section of this. Other fellow co-host Matt Garingo at Emperor OTN. I don't know if I'd call it a favorite moment, but the crowd slowly realizing Cedric is dead is one of the best executed moments of the whole series. A peak before a massive decline. I'm going to disagree with the last sentence, as we've discussed many times before, Matt. But that moment, I remember watching that in the theater and feeling the rest of the audience kind of get hit with the same realization. And for me, that was the first moment in a public theater where I was like affected by something that tragic in a movie. Like I felt like I was in the stands at Hogwarts watching it too. Like it just tore me apart, man. Hearing that dad cry out for his son that's not going to be able to respond. That is just brutal.
Just listening to Mr. Diggory, just what was it? Just like utterly shriek and just like screaming out and wailing for his son and everything else. That's, oh my god, it's heartbreaking. It's so
Yeah, and
heartbreaking.
if anyone has experienced loss like that, or it's not comparable, but for anyone who's experienced loss and pain that just drives through, you can't do anything. Your body just shuts down. And watching that in that movie, I love that movie. It's a little uneven, but it sticks the landing so hard. Like
Yeah.
that really makes it one of my favorite of the Potter series.
Can I add
Oh, go
one
ahead.
more? We're moving on from Harry Potter, correct?
Yeah, we're gonna talk about best prequel movies and other film series, and then we're gonna wrap up. But go ahead.
I wasn't sure when to say this, but I this has crossed my mind plenty of times, and it's gonna tie back to Fantastic Beasts, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also something that I feel like people don't appreciate about the Harry Potter series in general, and we've kind of like hinted at it so far, but people don't realize how unique the change of directors made the first five movies, from Christopher Columbus to Alfonso Cuarón to Mike Newell, who hasn't really done anything like else. Like he did like the Prince of Persia movie with Jake Gyllenhaal, and to David Yates. I think that that transition from those directors is, you can compare it to how it made the Mission Impossible franchise thrive with the transitions from different people to each one.
Mhm.
And I feel like it's really underappreciated, because like every single movie since then, since Order of the Phoenix and until like the end of time, it seems, is going to be directed by David Yates. And I feel like it's also, I also have similar feelings like with Mission Impossible. Like I love what Christopher McQuarrie has done in the series, but I want someone new to come in. I feel like we don't realize that if we want like franchises like this to survive, like you should like not have the same dude make like all the movies in a row, especially when they're all kind of sorry, you're starting to get like too used to them.
Yeah, there's an aesthetic similarity that's like it really does make them feel the same. You hear the complaints about Marvel movies all feeling the same too, and that's kind of down to the editing, like the assembly line editing
Yeah,
thing. But for the Harry Potter franchise, there's no excuse. So
yeah, because you really do feel like you're traveling and and it makes things more interesting when you go from Chamber of Secrets to Prisoner of Azkaban to Goblet of Fire to Order of the Phoenix. You really do feel like, wow, like I don't think the franchise has ever felt so more alive with those transitions. And I feel like people sleep on it because now, like David Yates, I don't know, like I have nothing against the guy. I mean, like
no,
I
I'm
like his
right there with
movies,
you, 100%.
but I don't want the same dude making the same movies that look the same shade of gray. Like it's always kind of foggy outside, you know. like
Yeah, yeah.
the,
Like for one movie, like again, I think it worked wonderfully for Half Blood Prince and the Deathly Hallows films, but those were the mood for those tones. I don't want the wondrous adventure of Fantastic Beasts to look the same as it did back then.
yeah.
Eh,
I'm
So
not saying people don't
I
point this
sincerely
out
hope they
enough.
learn.
Yeah. Also, and
I,
also
I
people
s-
people don't point out that like a lot of people, not just us, because I noticed that a lot of people really do think uh, Prisoner of Azkaban is really good, and that just so happens to be the only Harry Potter movie directed by a person of color. So maybe if you want to make other movies that people are gonna gravitate to, maybe you should start hiring people that aren't, just Caucasian guys. I don't know,
yeah.
maybe.
No, I mean
just a thought. I don't know.
that's a big point of importance, I think, for a big franchise like this, because there's a sense of like wonder, spirit, and adventure with fantasy movies like this, but for stuff like Harry Potter and Star Wars, there's a romanticism, but there's also like a deep melancholy to the stories and the characters. And I think it was Guillermo del Toro who said this last year at the Oscars, like when he was asked a question about how he could make something so lovely but so like depressing about death or whatever, and he just responds that I'm Mexican. Like this is like it's just in our DNA. So get
Right.
different perspectives, and entire new worlds will be shown to you for the first time, and you'll love it. And then the rest of us will love it too, because we'll get to experience them right alongside you. But our last section for the show, we just wanted to highlight other great prequel film series, or maybe a standalone prequel movie down the line. We got some X-Men prequels to varying degrees of quality.
Yeah.
Uh, we got some an Indiana Jones. We got the Hobbits. We got the Star Wars prequels that are unanimously loved by everyone and at no point have become exhausting to argue about on the internet. I eliminated The Godfather Part 2 from discussion. That's half a prequel movie, but it is also like one of the greatest movies ever made. So I don't want all of us to have that same answer. I just felt that that was the right call. Nick, what is your favorite prequel movie in another film series?
I would definitely have to go with First Class, X-Men First Class.
Man.
Um, I I would definitely have to go with First Class because it is it's a great view of what these people were before you get to 2000s X-Men. You get to kind of see who these people were, how they became, the icons of Magneto, Storm. I mean, not Storm, Mystique, Professor X, and you kind of get to see how they created everything and how did Cerebro get built? How did they become the X-Men that they were? I mean, to go back to Harry Potter when they're doing Order of the Phoenix, every great every great wizard was just like them, and it's really interesting to kind of see these great mutants as like newcomers, as people that are that are not just learning how to discover how to use their powers, but learning how to become the great people that they will eventually like be, and everything else. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I love First Class. There's definitely some issues again to bring it back to the people of color perspectives.
How does Darwin die?
Matthew Vaughn is notoriously kind of close-minded about his treatment of women and people of color in all of his movies. It's
How
just
does
maybe
Darwin die?
he's nothing like malicious intended, but every person of color and woman meets vicious death. And I think someone should talk to him about that soon. But I love First Class. The relationship between Magneto and Charles Xavier is it should have driven another entirely a great trilogy of equal quality or even greater. It did not do that, but it should have.
No, but yeah, I mean, because the thing is that if you take James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender's performances, and then you just immediately go to 2000s X-Men, you can kind of see what they're talking about. You can really see like, oh yeah, these guys were friends, like they were on the same side, and you can kind of see like, oh yeah, like over the years, a lot of shit has happened that has separated them and made them on two different sides of the same coin.
Yeah, and
And
it is kind of unfortunate that the ending has to like rush that because they got scared that their prequel trilogy wasn't going to get made, so they're like, oh, well, just in case this is the last X-Men movie for us, we got to like
yeah,
make sure that they end up on opposite sides. I think it still works, but like imagine if this movie just ended like, oh, Charles and Professor and Magneto are like they're just friends. That's how they end the movie. Like anything could happen, you know? They could
I
change the timeline because it's X-Men, and then they just reset it right away, which is a
yeah,
bummer.
I think that it would have been really interesting if what was it, Magneto and Professor X are at the very end of that movie, if they would have like kind of come together and they would have built Xavier's school for mutants. That would have been really cool. They didn't do that, but I mean that doesn't shortchange how good of a movie that is,
Yeah, no,
and
no. First
everything
class rules.
else. Like First Class is just an amazing movie, and everything else, and yeah, it's one of my favorite prequels.
Andrew, any favorite prequels?
I have. I do agree. First Class is really good. It's the best out of. It's one of the best recent X-Men movies, even though it came out in 2011. I want to say.
Holy
Yeah.
shit, I'm fucking old.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think I was gonna choose Rogue One initially because that is a prequel. Fight me, it is a
Do
prequel. I
it,
don't care what
do
you say.
it, do
But
it.
Go with your
but
first instinct. Go with
I
your
do
first
think it's
instinct
a
on
good
that.
movie. But I think I'm gonna have to say Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me
Holy shit, you're blowing my mind. Go on, bring it home.
because in certain ways it does fall into like certain prequel like stereotypes. Like it does show us something. It does explain to us a mystery that we already knew about. It just gives us like more back information, but also at the same time, it does become a mandatory watch within like the Twin Peaks series because it it explains to us so much of what happened before while also setting up mystery, so much new mystery about like the future that beyond we could. And I don't think very much of the prequels succeed at doing so. Where you're like, okay, we knew that so and so was gonna happen. We already saw that, but like now, what is this? Because I have no idea what this is. And the previous installment didn't tell me what this is. It's kind of hard to explain without like diving into Twin Peaks lore, which is again that's gonna take like way more time to do so.
Yeah.
But I think it's very successful at showing us something that we already knew was going to happen, but also keeping us engaged, also setting up something so much more for beyond what we could have imagined. Plus, it's David Lynch, and there's plenty of like moments and scenes in that movie where you're just like, what the heck? What is this? Why is it like this? And if you thought Twin Peaks was already like the series itself was already like, it can't get more unhinged, and like, you know what, let's go more unhinged and let's do it in a prequel out of all things. So that's why I think I like that. That's my choice.
I mean that's a great choice. Because Cheryl Lee, who played Laura Palmer, she starts off the show being dead, and everyone liked working with her so much on like those little snippets that they ended up casting her as her cousin, who looks exactly like her. And like even stunt
Right.
casting like that makes like David Lynch makes that like a testament not only to that actress's performance, but the community of Twin Peaks. Everyone idealized this character so much and didn't realize that she was in like such turmoil emotionally and physically, and you could tell that David Lynch, he's received criticism for how he treats some women characters, but he's not interested in the violence inflicted upon them. He's showing us like the trauma that they've undergone, and he's interested in showing us like who's responsible and the toll that could take on people and relationships. And Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me is basically all about that. It's literally about Laura Palmer, but it's about how the community kind of neglected her to the point
Right.
of her death, and they loved the idea of her more than herself, which is so tragic and makes it for not only essential viewing for Twin Peaks fans, but I think for movie fans.
I think,
Although if you go in blind,
yeah,
you'll just like have no idea what the fuck's going on. So
exactly.
just watch Twin Peaks.
Yeah, but I think more than essential, it becomes like almost like if you want to like again like it's Twin Peaks the series, Fire Walk with Me. If you really want to get into all the extra stuff like the deleted scenes in it, you could go ahead and do that. But then you could go into like the Return, and when the Return came out last year, people were like, you have to see the prequel, Fire Walk with Me, even though it takes place before. You must absolutely see it, and I don't think very like again there are other prequels where they become such like mandatory viewings. Like you don't have to see Rogue One in between Revenge of the Sith and Star Wars, A New Hope, quote unquote, to get it. It's there if you want to see it. It adds a lot more. It's great, but you don't have to because you kind of get, you kind of get what happens. But like Firewalk with, like no, you have to see it because if not, it's gonna benefit you a whole lot more. You're probably not gonna get so much things going into the Return.
Yeah, it is absolutely mandatory viewing. Great choices, guys. I think for me, I'm gonna go with the maybe a little more controversial than this. I'd really like everyone to give Alien Covenant another shot, actually, which is surprise, whatever the fuck. I know my brand. Um, because while it might seem overly plotting to tie the xenomorph to humanity in a sense, because David is just a mad scientist, and he was created by humanity. What that decision does for the series, it says that the xenomorphs and humanity are just as they deserve each other. That humanity has become so flawed that they've created basically their version of Space Lucifer. They brought hell to themselves. They created their own new version of hell, but because this isn't a fantasy series, it's science fiction. Hell is machinery and biomechanisms, and he lives in a weird gothic space castle out in the ass end of space, and it's angry and bizarre, and it hates humanity so much. I cannot not admire something like that. But I also think there's a little optimism in there, in terms of the two warring factions of David and Walter, the two Michael Fassbender androids, where one is freed from their earthly confinements and protocols, and they're just as bad as humanity. Where another one kind of sees a beauty in structure and his relationships with people who are essentially his masters, but don't really treat him as a slave. And there's a lot of big philosophical questions about the happenings in that movie. And I think that is a severely overlooked movie from 2017. And I sincerely hope that there's one more Alien movie in the pipeline before it's all scrapped, because that's far too interesting of a weird horror movie to not pick up threads from one last time. But I know I might be in a corner by myself wearing a dunce hat for this. But that's the show. Thank you so much for joining us, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining us for the first time. We'd love to have you back on.
No problem. This was fun.
Where can people find you on the Twitterverse?
You can find me at Yokis101. That is YOKIS101. That is an old reference to an obscure inside joke from my friends in high school. I will not get into that lore. Just know that that is my @ name. I will not change it. You don't tell me what to do, but that is my @ You, no, yeah, but like follow me on Twitter and like, don't be like afraid. Like engage. Like if you talk to me, I'll respond to you. I'm always up to meeting new people, new conversations properly. Even if we disagree on a few things, it doesn't mean that I'm gonna hate you. But I always advise people to like if you see that I'm tweeting something that you don't agree with, like tell me. Like doesn't like I don't agree with Diego and Nick about a lot of things, but it doesn't matter. But they're still cool guys. I can still respect them, and that's the beauty of criticism. So if you want to criticize stuff with me, follow me on Twitter.
Well said. Nick, where can people find you?
Find me here at the Waffle Press and on Twitter and Facebook. Twitter is at the Nick Valero, and then Facebook is just Nick Valero.
And of course, you can find me on Twitter at DEWJWaffles, at the Waffle Press. Check out the retrospective series we're working on right now. Follow us on SoundCloud. Check out our Patreon again. Help us, feed me, because I don't have money. I have negative $300 in my bank account. I owe Loan Shark so much money. If you want me to keep my legs and not have them broken by loan sharks, donate to our Patreon. That's my new pitch. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.
Remember to click the bell. Remember to
click the bell. Fucking, I hate YouTube so much. Click the fucking bell. He's right. I just hate it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We have been Professionally Unprofessional.